Nobody expects their Monday morning coffee run to turn into humanity's first contact with alien life, but there I was, standing in line at the third worst Starbucks in Atlanta when every screen in the place started broadcasting the same message. And I mean every screen, phones, laptops, the digital menu board, even somebody's Kindle. Attention sentient beings of Sol 3, this is an emergency broadcast from the Galactic Council. The barista stopped mid-sentence, her hand frozen over the cup where she'd been about to write what I'm sure would have been a creative misspelling of Dale. The whole place went quiet, except for one guy in the corner who kept arguing with his AirPods about quarterly projections. The message continued, now with a hologram sprouting from every display. The alien speaking looked like what you'd get if you crossed a praying mantis with a peacock and then gave it a desk job. It wore what appeared to be the space equivalent of a business-casual suit. We regret to inform you that your sector has been exposed to a Class 1 pandemic-level viral threat. As the nearest uncontacted civilization with sufficient medical infrastructure, we are requisitioning your assistance. Please direct us to your leading epidemiologists. I raised my hand before I could stop myself. 15 years at the CDC, and this was definitely not covered in the employee handbook. The hologram turned to face me specifically, which was more than a little unsettling. You have relevant expertise. Dr. Dale Murphy, CDC Virology Department, I said, immediately regretting every life choice that led to this moment. But maybe we should talk to someone higher up the chain first. Excellent, initiating emergency transport. The last thing I heard before the blue light enveloped me was the barista calling out, I've got a grande caramel macchiato for... Wait, where did he go? Next thing I knew, I was standing in what looked like the lobby of an intergalactic UN building, still clutching my CDC badge in one hand and nothing where my coffee should have been. The room was filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes, most of them looking like they were having significantly worse days than I was. A tall, elegant creature that resembled a bioluminescent giraffe in a three-piece suit glided over to me. Dr. Murphy, I am Ambassador Crix. Thank you for responding so promptly to our call for aid. They paused, antenna twitching. Though I must say your species' response time was unexpectedly swift. Most civilizations require at least several hours of governmental deliberation before offering assistance. Yeah, about that. I started, but was immediately cut off by another alien rushing toward us. This one looked like a cross between a salamander and a lab coat, with multiple arms clutching various tablets and scientific instruments. Is this the human expert? Wonderful! I'm Dr. Vila, head of xenobiology for the Council. We have so much to discuss, but first, is it true your species still ingests liquid caffeine as a stimulant? Fascinating, barbaric but fascinating. I looked between them, the perfectly composed ambassador and the clearly frazzled scientist, and decided to just roll with it. Any chance I could get some of that barbaric caffeine before we start? I was kind of in the middle of something. Ambassador Crix's facial feathers ruffled in what I hoped was amusement. Dr. Murphy, I'm afraid we have more pressing matters. You see, we're dealing with a virus that has already wiped out populations on 12 worlds. We need your expertise immediately. And you came to Earth for help? To the planet that's still arguing about whether masks work? Dr. Vila's skin shifted through several worried colors. You were our last resort. Every other civilization in your sector has already fallen to the virus. But your species shows complete immunity. We need to know why. I looked around the room again, really taking in the panic on all those alien faces. Then I thought about the contents of my abandoned breakfast order, and Earth's long history of surviving things we probably shouldn't have. Well, I said, already knowing this was going to be one of those days, you're not going to like the answer. The next few hours were a crash course in galactic medicine, which mostly involved me trying not to laugh at how advanced civilizations had somehow missed some really obvious stuff. Like, they had faster-than-light travel but had never thought to try killing viruses with soap. Let me get this straight, I said, staring at the holographic display in the Council's main lab. This virus is attacking cellular structures that don't exist in humans. Dr. Vila's scales rippled with excitement. Precisely. The virus targets the quantum cellular matrix that all known sentient species use for higher consciousness. But your species... They paused, mandibles clicking in what I was starting to recognize as scientific frustration. Your species appears to process consciousness through an entirely primitive biological system that the virus simply cannot interface with. So we're immune because we're too stupid to get sick? I couldn't help but grin. Humanity's greatest defense, being completely underwhelming. Ambassador Crix, who had been hovering nearby with increasing concern, interjected. Dr. Murphy, perhaps we could focus on developing a treatment rather than celebrating human uniqueness. I was about to respond when my stomach growled loudly enough to make several alien scientists jump. Sorry, I said. Been a while since breakfast. Any chance you've got a cafeteria around here? The look of horror that crossed multiple alien faces should have prepared me for what came next. Dr. Vila pulled up another hologram, this one showing human dietary habits. We've been studying your species' consumption patterns, and frankly, we're disturbed. You regularly ingest neurotoxins for pleasure. You mean coffee? Yeah, pretty much runs our whole civilization at this point. And these preserved meat products filled with sodium and nitrates. Hot dogs, look, I can explain. And this substance called energy drink that contains enough stimulants to stop a Craxian battle beast's heart? I thought about the six-pack of Monster Energy in my office fridge and decided not to mention it. Maybe we should run some tests on human biochemistry? Could be relevant to the virus situation. That got their attention. The next few hours were spent with me hooked up to more medical scanners than I knew existed, while Dr. Vila got increasingly excited about every terrible human survival trait they discovered. This is remarkable, they exclaimed, waving a tablet with my test results. Your species has developed resistance to almost everything that should kill you. Your digestive system can process substances that would be considered biological weapons on most worlds. Ambassador Crix's feathers were now permanently ruffled. Are you suggesting that the key to saving the galaxy lies in humanity's poor health choices? Not exactly, I said, an idea forming. But what if that's part of it? We've spent our entire evolution building up resistances, fighting off viruses, and basically surviving things that should have killed us, while the rest of the galaxy was developing perfect, efficient biological systems. We were shotgunning energy drinks and eating gas station sushi. Dr. Vila's colour shifted to what I hoped was their eureka shade. The constant exposure to low-level toxins, the adaptations, the completely inefficient but remarkably resilient biological processes. Dr. Murphy, your species' bad habits might just save us all. Great, I said, watching as they started frantically collecting more data. But I'm still getting lunch first, right? Because I'm pretty sure I saw a vending machine in the lobby. And if we're betting on human junk food to save the galaxy, I should probably stay on brand. Ambassador Crix made a sound that might have been a sigh. I'll have something arranged, though I must note for the record that this will be the first time in Galactic Council history that a civilization's first contact meeting included a lunch break. First time for everything, I said cheerfully. Just wait until you hear about our approach to breakfast foods. Setting up an emergency response center in space was surprisingly similar to doing it on Earth, just with more tentacles involved. We commandeered a large laboratory complex on the Galactic Council station, and I had to admit, their equipment made our best stuff look like something from a dollar store science kit. No, you can't put the isolation units next to the break room, I said, watching a team of multi-limbed technicians rearranging the lab space. Trust me on this one. I don't care if it's spatially efficient. One person forgets to change their gloves before grabbing coffee and we'll have an interstellar incident. Dr. Vila, who had been frantically documenting every word I said as if it were gospel, looked up from their tablet. But our containment fields are rated for... Never underestimate human ability to mess up basic safety protocols, I interrupted. I once had an intern try to microwave a viral sample because they thought it would work faster than the incubator. The horror on their face made their scales turn a fascinating shade of green. They survived? Got a promotion, actually. Turned out they accidentally discovered a new sterilization technique, which, now that I think about it, is pretty much how humans discover most things. Ambassador Crix, who had appointed themselves my official babysitter, swept into the room with their usual impeccable timing. "Dr. Murphy, the Council is demanding updates. Please tell me you have something more substantial than anecdotes about human incompetence." I pointed to the holographic display where we'd been mapping human biochemical responses to the virus. "Actually, yeah. Remember how I said our terrible habits might be the key? Turns out human biochemistry is basically a horror show of adaptations. We're finding stuff in our cellular structure that looks like someone threw everything at the wall to see what stuck, and then the wall survived." Dr. Vila's excitement was causing them to literally glow. "The implications are staggering. Your species has developed natural defense mechanisms that shouldn't be possible. It's as if you evolved by accidentally doing everything wrong and somehow turning it into an advantage." "Yeah, we get that a lot," I said. "But here's the interesting part. We think we can synthesize these defenses, create a treatment that would essentially temporarily give other species our garbage disposal-style immune system." Ambassador Crix's feathers twitched. "And the side effects?" I looked at the preliminary data and winced. "Well, how do you feel about coffee cravings?" The next few hours were a blur of activity as we started trials. Our first breakthrough came when one of the lab techs accidentally contaminated a sample with some crumbs from my emergency stash of gas station beef jerky. Instead of ruining the experiment, it somehow improved the results by about 300%. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Vila exclaimed, their glow now bright enough to read by. "The combination of preservatives, synthetic compounds, and what you call artificial flavoring is actually enhancing the treatment's effectiveness." I watched as they eagerly analyzed the modified sample. Should I mention what's in a hot dog, or would that cause an interstellar incident? "Dr. Murphy," Ambassador Crix said with what I was learning to recognize as their "please don't make this worse" tone. "Perhaps we should focus on the medical implications rather than the culinary aspects." "That's just it, though," I said, pulling up another display. "Look at this. Every clean sample we've tried has failed, but add in some of humanity's worst dietary choices, and suddenly it works. It's like the virus can't handle our level of processed foods any more than most aliens can." Dr. Vila was practically vibrating with scientific excitement. "We need to run more tests. Dr. Murphy, what other human substances should we try? What about this energy drink you mentioned?" I thought about it for a moment. You know what? If we're really betting on humanity's worst ideas saving the galaxy, I've got some thoughts. But Ambassador, you might want to sit down for this one, and maybe get legal on the line because we're about to make medical history in the most human way possible. "Why?" Crix asked with growing dread. "Do I feel like I'm about to regret allowing this?" "Probably because you are," I said cheerfully. "Now, who wants to help me explain to the Galactic Council why we need to requisition about 1,000 cases of monster energy and every hot dog we can find on Earth?" The sound Crix made wasn't quite a sigh, wasn't quite a laugh, and wasn't quite a cry for help, but it was somehow all three at once. The Galactic Council's emergency session to approve our treatment plan set a new record for both shortest deliberation time and most horrified expressions in a single meeting. Turns out when half your population is dying from an unstoppable virus, you become a lot more open-minded about unorthodox solutions. "Let me clarify," said the council head, a being that looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a chandelier. "Your proposed treatment involves deliberately exposing patients to human dietary compounds?" "Think of it as an immune system reboot," I explained, trying to sound more professional than "we're going to make everyone drink Monster Energy until they're too caffeinated to die." We've synthesized the key components of human cellular resilience combined with compounds that enhance their effectiveness. Dr. Vila, vibrating with enough excitement to blur slightly, jumped in. The results are remarkable. The treatment essentially tricks the patient's body into temporarily developing human-like resistance patterns. And the primary active ingredients are substances humans regularly consume for pleasure? Another council member asked, their crystalline structure clouding with concern. I pulled up our test results. The base formula includes synthesized versions of what we call energy drink compounds, various preservatives common in processed foods, and a complex mixture we've derived from what humans consider gas station cuisine. The entire council chamber went quiet enough to hear multiple species versions of horrified digestion sounds. It works, though, I added quickly. We've already successfully treated the first test group. Show them the footage, Doc. Dr. Vila proudly displayed the video of our first cured patients. The aliens looked healthy, alert, and were they raiding the vending machines? Yes, there are some minor side effects, I admitted as we watched a respected xenobiologist argue with their colleague over the last protein bar. But we're considering the sudden cravings for caffeine and processed snacks as a small price to pay for survival. Ambassador Crix, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. The treatment has been designated as the Earth Special Protocol, and while I never thought I would say this, we recommend immediate galaxy-wide distribution. The mass production phase was something I'll never forget. We converted entire space stations into what were essentially cosmic convenience stores. Assembly lines of robots produced what looked like the universe's biggest batch of energy drinks, while teams of scientists worked to synthesize the perfect blend of artificial flavors and preservatives. The scaling is proceeding faster than expected, Dr. Vila reported, now permanently hovering in an excited state, though we had to modify several production facilities after the first batch melted through standard storage containers. Yeah, that tracks, I said, watching a stream of iridescent liquid fill millions of containers. Real energy drinks do that too sometimes. The first mass distribution of the cure went better than anyone expected, largely because most species were too sick to argue about the treatment method. The results were immediate and undeniable. Within hours of receiving the Earth Special, patients began showing signs of recovery. Within days, entire populations were returning to normal. Well, a new normal that included some interestingly human traits. Dr. Murphy, Ambassador Crix called out as they hurried into the lab one morning, their usually immaculate feathers slightly ruffled. We may have a situation developing. I looked up from where I was helping calibrate the synthesizers. Good situation or bad situation? That remains to be determined. You see, the treated populations are exhibiting some unexpected behavioral changes. They're demanding what they call snack breaks during council sessions. There's talk of installing coffee machines in the High Court of Justice, and yesterday the entire diplomatic corps insisted on ordering something called pizza. I tried and failed to suppress a grin. But they're not dying anymore, right? Crix's feathers did their equivalent of an eye roll. No, they're not dying. They're just becoming increasingly human. Could be worse, I said, checking the latest batch of cure. At least nobody's tried to deep fry anything yet. The look of horror on Crix's face told me I probably shouldn't mention what happened when humans discovered you could deep fry butter. Some things the galaxy just wasn't ready for. You know what the real irony is? I asked, watching another 1,000,000 doses of cure roll off the production line. Humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization turned out to be all our worst habits combined. The Council is already drafting new health and safety regulations, Crix said wearily, though I suspect it's too late to prevent the spread of what your species calls comfort food. Just wait until they discover dips, I muttered under my breath, making a mental note to stock up on snacks before the inevitable galaxy-wide junk food shortage hit. 3 weeks after we started distributing the cure, I sat in what had become my regular spot in the Galactic Council's observation deck, watching the most entertaining governmental session in history. Below me, representatives from 100 worlds were engaged in what they called emergency deliberations, but what looked suspiciously like a coffee break that had gotten out of hand. I never thought I'd see a quantum hive mind argue about flavor preferences, Dr. Vila said, settling into the seat next to me with what appeared to be their 6th cup of coffee. Their scales had taken on a jittery iridescence that perfectly matched their caffeine intake. The Federation of Crystal Minds is insisting on installing something called a snack bar in their meditation chambers. How's that going? They're currently debating whether chips would disrupt their harmonic resonance. I watched as below us Ambassador Crix attempted to maintain order, while various representatives demanded what they now called essential dietary supplements, known on Earth as junk food. Their usually pristine feathers were distinctly rumpled, and I could have sworn they were clutching their own cup of coffee. You know, I said, when we cured the virus, I didn't expect to trigger a galaxy-wide cultural revolution through snack foods. Dr. Vila's scales rippled with what I'd learned was their version of amusement. The changes are fascinating from a scientific perspective. Did you see the latest data on the Hive Collective? They've developed individual food preferences, individuals in a hive mind. Some want sweet snacks, others savory. They're having an existential crisis over pizza toppings. The chamber below erupted into another round of chaos as someone suggested implementing designated snack times. The quantum hive mind representatives were vibrating at what appeared to be coffee-induced frequencies, and I'm pretty sure I saw one of the crystal minds dipping a cookie in their tea. Dr. Murphy, Ambassador Crix had somehow materialized beside us, their feathers in unprecedented disarray. We need your expertise immediately. The Council of Elders is demanding something called a coffee maker for their meditation chamber, but they're arguing about brewing methods. Apparently, someone introduced them to something called pour-over, and now they're refusing to use replicators. I tried to keep a straight face. Have they discovered espresso yet? The look of horror on Crix's face was answer enough. That's not even the most concerning development, Dr. Vila added, their scales now practically disco dancing with excitement. The collective of pure thought has started experiencing something they call cravings. They spent 3 hours yesterday trying to replicate something called mac and cheese because, and I quote, it feels right. And the temporal consortium, Crix added with what sounded like barely suppressed hysteria, has filed a formal request to install what they call vending machines in their time observation chambers. They claim it's essential for maintaining focus during temporal calculations. Below us, the council session had devolved into what appeared to be an impromptu taste-testing event. Someone had introduced the concept of flavor combinations, and now various species were experimenting with mixing different snacks together. Should we tell them about dipping fries in milkshakes? I asked innocently. Both Crix and Vila turned to stare at me with their respective versions of horror and fascination. You know, Dr. Vila said thoughtfully, their scientists' curiosity obviously warring with their better judgment, from a pure research perspective, the impact of human dietary habits on advanced civilizations is fascinating. We're seeing fundamental changes in social structures, decision-making processes, and even philosophical approaches. They're putting snack breaks in their sacred texts, Crix said weakly. Cultural evolution, I suggested helpfully. Just think of it as really fast anthropology. The High Council of Logic has requested a pizza party, Crix continued, sounding increasingly desperate. A pizza party, Dr. Murphy. They've existed for 10,000 years without the concept of casual dining, and now they're discussing toppings during metaphysical debates. I watched as below us a group of energy beings tried to figure out how to high-five after successfully replicating something that looked suspiciously like nachos. Maybe humanity's real gift to the galaxy wasn't just surviving the virus. Maybe it was teaching everyone how to take a break and enjoy the little things, like artificially flavored snacks and highly caffeinated beverages. Dr. Vila's scales had settled into what I recognized as their taking notes pattern. Adding social cohesion through shared culinary experiences to my research parameters. Adding headache medication to my personal requirements, Crix muttered, but I noticed they were still clutching their coffee cup. Just then a cheer went up from the council chamber. Apparently, someone had successfully replicated Earth-style ice cream. "You know what this means?" I asked, watching various alien species discover brain freeze for the first time. "The end of dignified galactic governance as we know it," Crick suggested. "The beginning of a fascinating new era in xenosociology," Vila offered. "Nope," I said, grinning as I watched civilization as we knew it transform through the power of snack foods. "It means we're definitely going to need bigger vending machines." 6 months after the Great Virus Crisis, I stood before the full Galactic Council for what they called a formal recognition ceremony, but what looked more like a cocktail party with better lighting. The Grand Chamber had been modified to include what I was pretty sure were snack tables, and I couldn't help noticing that several of the more ethereal species had figured out how to handle solid food just for the occasion. "Dr. Dale Murphy," intoned the council head, their crystalline form gleaming under the ceremonial lights. "We are gathered here to acknowledge humanity's contribution to galactic civilization." They paused, then added with what sounded suspiciously like resignation, "Both intended and unexpected." Ambassador Crix, now sporting what appeared to be a coffee cup holder integrated into their formal robes, stepped forward. "Thanks to Earth's assistance, not only was the viral crisis averted, but the galaxy has entered what scholars are already calling the Great Awakening, though some of us," they added with a pointed ruffle of their feathers, "might describe it differently." "The scientific implications alone are revolutionary," Dr. Vila chimed in from where they were attempting to balance multiple data tablets while eating what looked like their own body weight in potato chips. Their scales had settled into a permanent caffeine-induced shimmer. "Humanity's unique biological adaptations have opened entirely new fields of research and cultural exchange," added a representative from the quantum hive mind, who had somehow taught their collective consciousness to experience sugar rushes. "We've never known such diversity of thought as we have since discovering flavor preferences." I tried to maintain a properly serious expression, but it was hard when I could see at least 3 different species trying to figure out how to dunk cookies in their drinks without being too obvious about it. "In recognition of humanity's service," the council head continued, "Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council with all associated rights and privileges. Dr. Murphy, you have been appointed as humanity's first ambassador, given your unique understanding of both our cultures." "And our dietary habits?" I couldn't resist asking. The ripple of what was definitely not supposed to be laughter that went through the chamber suggested I wasn't the only one who appreciated the irony. "Additionally," they continued, pointedly ignoring my comment, "we are pleased to announce the establishment of the Earth Institute for Xenobiological Studies, where Dr. Vila will continue their research into human resilience factors, though perhaps with slightly more focus on the medical aspects and less on what they called the perfect snack mix." Dr. Vila had the grace to look embarrassed, though their scales flickered with what I recognized as scientific enthusiasm. "Finally," Ambassador Crix announced, "we have approved humanity's first major cultural export enterprise." They managed to make it sound like both a diplomatic achievement and a personal defeat. "The Earth Food and Beverage Corporation has been granted licenses to establish what you call convenience stores throughout council space." The chamber erupted in what was definitely not supposed to be excited chatter. I caught fragments of conversations about flavor combinations and coffee bean sourcing that would have been unthinkable just months ago. "There is, however, one small matter to address," the council head added, their crystalline form clouding slightly. "Our investigation into the origin of the virus has revealed something interesting." I had a sudden sinking feeling. Interesting how? "It appears the virus may have originated from Earth." The chamber went quiet enough to hear multiple species versions of nervous swallowing. "Specifically," they continued, "from what you call a gas station hot dog. The quantum field effects of your preservation methods apparently created a cross-dimensional bacterial mutation that evolved into the virus when exposed to faster-than-light travel." I considered this for a moment, So what you're saying is, we nearly destroyed the galaxy with a hot dog, then saved it with hot dogs. That is technically accurate, yes. And now we're opening convenience stores across the galaxy. Also correct. I couldn't help it. I started laughing. After a moment, Dr. Vila joined in, their scales creating a light show worthy of a dance club. Then Ambassador Crix's feathers started quivering in what was definitely suppressed amusement. Soon the entire chamber was filled with various species versions of laughter. You know what this means, right? I asked once I could speak again. That humanity's influence on galactic civilization is more complex than we anticipated, suggested the council head. That the universe has a deeply ironic sense of humor, offered Crix. Nope, I said, grinning as I watched various council members try to discreetly return to the snack tables. It means the galaxy's first fast food franchise is going to have one hell of a marketing campaign. And that's how humanity saved the galaxy with bad habits and questionable food choices, then proceeded to turn the entire council space into what was essentially a cosmic convenience store. Not bad for a species that still can't agree on whether hot dogs count as sandwiches, though I did make sure to add a warning label to the gas station hot dogs. Caution, may cause interdimensional viral mutations when exposed to FTL travel, but at least you'll be immune to them.